This was how Ajinkya Rahane was dismissed in the last World Test Championship final. This is a cricket shot, at least nominally. It's incredibly soporific. I'm not even sure it has a real name. I suppose it's a paddle pool. You can see what Rahane thinks of this, and also just how long he thinks this about it. Of course, Rahane is not exactly the only person to ever go out to Neil Wagner bowling a short delivery. If you freeze it here, you will see that there are 4 fielders in place for a mistake a little bit like this. In fact, if you look at it in this angle, it's 5. And let's be honest, it was Neil Wagner. There was probably 6 over there as well. This is essentially Neil Wagner's slip cordon, right? It's also worth noting that this was a top score by India in that match. But who cares if you can't pass 50 or actually win the game? In the second innings, he got a touch on a rare wayward ball from Trent Boult. He looked solid in this match and found 2 ways of getting out that were not regulation. And the problem with Rahane is you always have to look beyond the obvious to see the good signs of him. Nothing is ever easy with him. For instance, today he made 89, not 100. It was a tough, gutsy knock, and he probably doesn't have many fingers left on his hand. But all it did was take India from a completely unwinnable position to a still really bloody unlikely victorious position. And if India do somehow go on to win this game, it would have been on the back of someone else doing something even more remarkable than what he did. Even when Rahane wins, he doesn't actually win. It is hard being an Indian cricketer. You are no longer allowed to eat after being dismissed in a test match, for instance. Rahane was certainly the whipping boy for a long time, what with Ishant Sharma retiring from that position to become the comeback king. And it would have been lost on most cricket fans that Ishant actually struggled in an era when it was very tough to bowl. And Rahane would go on to struggle when it was tough for batting. Instead, it was clearly just that Ishant was terrible for a while, and then Rahane was keeping out younger, better players. If you look at Rahane's record, he was still averaging 48 in the middle of 2017, and I haven't picked that by accident. That was the exact time when the pace pandemic starts. And then after that, it's been rough. And it's fine for us to know that, but most people don't look at it this way. And so they just see Rahane has been terrible. There is something else here worth thinking about as well. Where Rahane makes runs. This is all the Indian players with more than 1,500 runs on the road. The only players with a better record than him from his era is Virat Kohli, and even then, it's pretty much the same. This is what Rahane was in the team for. In fact, since 2013, this is all the players with 15 runs home and away. All but 3 are better at home. And you can see Rahane was the second best player when you look at away versus home. But being good away from home means that your teammates absolutely love you, and that all but hardcore fans miss out on most of your best work. Away helps your career, home helps your brand. Not all series are equal either. Time zones play a part, and so does the opposition. From 16 matches in England, for instance, Rahane has the lowest Indian average of any player with 500 test runs. If you can't make runs at home, and you don't conquer England, you're not really leaving people a lot to see you in. Think about his greatest moments, the 2013 to 15 period, which is now a very, very long time ago. Good captaincy in Dharamsala in 2015 to ice a series that India almost lost, and the miracle in Australia of 2021. That series is kind of the point though. Rahane took over a team that didn't have its main players, used net bowlers and IPL projects, and won a series in Australia. But instead of him being the story, it is either Pant or Pujara or Ashwin or Sundar or a chest guard or whichever seamers were actually fit and playing at that point. Even his batting position is an issue. Batting behind Virat Kohli is like performing after Frank Sinatra. It's just, I don't know, just lives in the shade. When he was dropped, it felt like the correct time. And if anything, it looked like he had ruined all the hard-earned reputation that he had built over the previous years. There was also no white ball career to save him either. Almost no one was left fighting in his corner by the time he was left out of that team. And he was old as well. I could tell you his age, or I could show you this. Ajinkya Rahane is so old that he made his first class debut in Karachi. Like, he had his time, and it was clearly now for someone else to have a go. And so he left Test and he went back to the first class game, back in the Ranji. That's quite a fall from vice captain of the Test team. And also something he really hadn't done much since being an international player. He made runs, which was important, but he had always averaged 57 for Mumbai, which is basically the same number that many of the players that people online wanted him to be replaced with. Since going back, he's continued to average over 50 with 3 scores over 190. He also played some List A cricket where he averaged 65. Despite that, he went back to the IPL and actually had a poor year in 2022. And whatever was affecting his red ball batting was also clearly a factor over there. But look at the next season. Rahane went from an IPL scrub, bench player and backup batter to winning the IPL and smashing the ball in the final. This was his best year of the IPL by so far that it looks like he stole it from Andre Russell. Clearly something happens around the middle of 2022. He needed to change, and he must have. And in this innings, you can point to Rahane's luck. He was dropped and dismissed from a no ball. But it's also worth noting that he was batting at number 5, and so was Travis Head. They both made a lot of runs in this game. There is no doubt that as the ball gets softer, it gets a little bit easier to bat on this surface. But it wouldn't matter if the previous version of Rahane was dropped every couple of overs. He still wouldn't have looked like he did specifically today. How well was Rahane batting? Well, good enough to survive and thrive on a tricky surface and also make Pat Cummins upset. After this kick, Cummins went into the change room and told Australia they had to improve. Rahane, of all players, was the man who rattled the Aussies, with of course some happy vibes from the Lord himself. But it was quite clear, have a look at this, it's sex on wheels over here, barely hitting the ball. His feet and weight are perfect, capitalising on micro errors from Australia again and again. The timing on some of these balls is so incredible, but also are the choices of the balls he was attacking. Throughout this innings, it was someone who was in complete control of their offside play. He essentially painted a picture from extra cover all the way through to backward point. Him through the offside was just what perfect balance and control should look like. Almost never trying to overhit. In fact, the only one that he really did, there was an edge to. Of course, it was the offside that got him. One last push that rocketed off his bat, but this time from a ball that was not completely in his zone. And so because of that, you'd have to say on this pitch, it wasn't the right one to attack. However, it still could have screamed off to the boundary. This catch was incredible. I'm not actually sure that there was an angle that really shows how brilliant it was. I just happened to be directly behind it, and it looked like the ball was well past green, and then his arm somehow extends. It was like watching Paul Collingwood on Jonty Rhodes' shoulders, in athleticism and length. And it was all anyone was talking about, but of course it was. Ajinkya Rahane had come back from career death to make runs on a tricky wicket in the World Test Championship final, and of course it was the catch that stopped the 100 that was more important than the runs themselves. We can't finish there, so let's show this. This was the important moment for me. Cummins is short and fast. Rahane plays a proper swing here, and the ball just flies and flies until it almost injures a crowd member. This is one hell of a hit, and also a pretty good visual representation that Ajinkya Rahane is a lot better than he was not that long ago. And shall we just check the last two finals and have a look? I mean, these are two different species of cricket shots. One is a timid half, and the other one needs to be measured digitally to find out how far Rahane actually hit the ball. Of course, as good as he batted, the chances are that he might yet again top score in another World Test Championship loss. It's a hell of a comeback. But again, Rahane still looks like he's going to be in the shade.